Welcome back to B Master 79. Today we are doing ielts speaking part 2 and part 3. Cue card number 47 describes something you would like to learn in the future. We will plan it together in 1 minute, hear a full band 9 long turn, and then work through all 6 part 3 questions. 2 honest notes before we start. First, band 9 here is our own assessment against the public ielts band descriptors. It is not a certified examiner score. Second, our candidate, Ngok, is invented, and so is the cousin in her story. Copy her technique. Never copy her content. An examiner can hear a memorized answer within about 10 seconds. Here is the plan, the part 2 format, the cue card itself, 1 minute of planning done properly, the full long turn in 5 chunks, the technique behind it, then all 6 part 3 questions with a plan and an answer for each. We finish with a language bank and a challenge for you. Part 2, quickly. The examiner hands you a card and a pencil. You get 1 minute to prepare, then you speak for between 1 and 2 minutes. The examiner will stop you at 2 minutes, and stopping you is a good sign, not a bad one. Aim to still be talking when they do. Here is the card, exactly as it is written. Read it twice. The first read tells you the topic. The second read tells you the last line, which is the one candidates forget. The same card carries 6 part 3 questions. We will answer every one of them later, but read them now, because knowing where the discussion is heading changes how you plan the long turn. A quick note on this particular card, because we show source material as it comes rather than tidying it up. Now the minute. Most candidates waste it because they try to write sentences. You cannot read your own sentences under pressure. You can read keywords. Here are the 4 rules. So the page starts like this. 5 prompts down the left, nothing on the right. Pause the video here and fill it in yourself before you see how Ngok filled it in. And here is her minute. Look at how little is written. Sign language. Class is then immersion. A center in Hanoi. Cousin born deaf. Locked door. Own grammar. Eyebrows, unlearning. That is about 30 words, and it is enough for 2 minutes of speech. 3 things worth noticing about that plan. Here is the full long turn in 5 chunks. Listen once for the language and a second time for the structure. Chunk 1. The opening. Notice that she answers the question in the first 7 words, then adds a reason to keep talking.
The thing I'd most like to get to grips with over the next few years is sign language, Vietnamese sign language specifically. It's been sitting near the top of my list for years, and I'm determined to finally do something about it.
Chunk 2. Straight to the why, out of order, because the story is the strongest card in her hand and she plays it early.
The reason is quite personal. My younger cousin was born profoundly deaf, and for most of our childhood we communicated through a sort of improvised mixture of gestures, facial expressions, and scribbled notes. It worked more or less, but it always felt like we were talking through a locked door.
Chunk 3. The how. Watch her disagree with an imaginary opponent. Disagreeing with someone is an easy way to keep speaking.
As for how I'd go about it, I'm fairly sure self-study wouldn't cut it. So much of the meaning lies in movement and in the space around the signer. I'd want structured classes with a deaf teacher, ideally someone who signs natively, and then I'd throw myself into the deaf community because immersion is what actually builds fluency.
Chunk 4. The where. 2 places, not one, and each place earns its place by doing a different job.
In terms of where, there's a deaf cultural centre in Hanoi that runs evening courses which would fit neatly around work. I start there, then top it up with weekend meetups where deaf signers and hearing learners socialise. That informal practice is where you pick up the slang and the natural rhythm, the things no curriculum ever teaches you.
Chunk 5. The and explain part, which is where most long turns quietly fall apart. Hers finishes on a clean, deliberate closing line.
And is it difficult? Honestly, far harder than people assume. What throws beginners is that sign language has its own grammar. It isn't Vietnamese with your hands. The word order works differently, and your eyebrows are doing grammatical work, not just showing emotion. So there's a great deal of unlearning involved. But that's precisely what makes it worth doing.
That was the whole answer. Here it is again on one screen, so pause and read it if you want to. Some measured numbers because I do not want to guess at them. That long turn is 273 words. Spoken, it runs 1 minute 58 seconds, which sits comfortably inside the 1 to 2 minute window at about 139 words per minute. That is a normal, unhurried speaking rate. You do not need to talk quickly to score well. So why does that answer work? 4 things, and every one of them is something you can copy tomorrow. Answer in the first sentence. Sign language, Vietnamese sign language specifically. No warm-up, no well, let me think. The examiner knows your topic within 7 words. Reorder the bullets on purpose. She takes Y second, not fourth. The bullets are prompts, not a running order, and a fluent speaker follows the logic of the story instead. Plant one image, then return to it. Talking through a locked door does more work than any list of adjectives, and it makes the whole answer feel like one thing rather than 5. Finish the last bullet properly, and explain whether it's difficult gets a real answer with a reason and a closing judgment instead of being reached with 4 seconds to spare. Part 3 now. The examiner drops the card and starts a discussion. The questions get more abstract. They are about people in general rather than about you, and each answer wants roughly 40 to 60 seconds. One clear position, one reason, one example, one qualification. That shape works almost every time. Question 1. Before the answer, the 3 seconds of thinking that make it possible. Languages plus coding, now AI tools. Why cheap, online, job-driven contrasts, short courses vs degrees.
Languages have always been the default, and coding took over for roughly a decade. But what I'm seeing now is a rush towards artificial intelligence tools, which is a slightly different beast. People aren't enrolling on 3-year programs for that. They're doing a weekend course or simply following someone on YouTube. I think that shift matters more than the subject itself. Learning has become something you top up continuously rather than something you complete once and put on a shelf.
Question 2. Before the answer, the 3 seconds of thinking that make it possible. Staged, not one age. Small choices at 5-6, real ones by mid-teens. Why judgment is a skill, needs reps.
I don't think there's a single age you can point to, because it ought to be staged rather than switched on. Very young children, say 5 or 6, can perfectly well choose what to wear or what to read, where the worst outcome is a slightly odd outfit. By the mid-teens, they should be making choices with real consequences, subjects, friendships, how they spend their money. My reasoning is that judgment is a skill and skills need repetitions. If a child is protected from every decision until 18 and then handed a life-changing one, that's not caution, that's negligence.
Question 3. Before the answer, the 3 seconds of thinking that make it possible. Which matters more? Answer: the meaning depends on family safety net. Most hedge interest inside a safe field.
Realistically, income wins more often than people like to admit, although it very much depends on how much of a safety net you have behind you. If your parents can absorb a couple of years of you finding yourself, you can afford to follow an interest. If you're expected to support them, and that luxury simply isn't on the table. What I notice most, though, is that young people hedge. They pick a safe, employable field and then chase the interests inside it, studying business, but gravitating towards the creative end of it. It's a compromise, and I'd say it's a fairly sensible one.
Question 4. Before the answer, the 3 seconds of thinking that make it possible. Vietnam, yes, heavily, but changing old model. Obey new, consult then filter. Why parents map is out of date.
In Vietnam, absolutely, far more than in a lot of Western countries, where the whole thing is treated as the young person's own business. That said, the nature of it is changing. My parents' generation expected agreement. Mine tends to consult and then filter. We listen carefully and then quietly discount the parts that are clearly out of date. And a lot of it is out of date through no fault of theirs. Half the jobs my friends do didn't exist when our parents were choosing a career, so their map of the world simply doesn't include the territory.
Question 5. Before the answer, the 3 seconds of thinking that make it possible. Teachers, older siblings, alumni, now strangers, online influencers. Risk confident advice, no stake in outcome.
Teachers and older siblings mainly, and I'd say siblings are underrated because they've been through the same system recently enough for their advice to still be accurate. Alumni are valuable for the same reason. Increasingly, though, people take advice from complete strangers online, which I have mixed feelings about. The reach is wonderful. A teenager in a small province can hear from someone doing the exact job they want, but an influencer is rewarded for sounding certain and they carry none of the consequences if they're wrong. Your aunt, whatever her limitations, at least has to look at you at dinner.
Question 6. Before the answer, the 3 seconds of thinking that make it possible. Control the pace, no performing deep work, no interruptions cost, no one catches your errors.
Mostly for control, I think. On you only set the pace. You can spend 40 minutes on one stubborn paragraph without feeling you're holding anybody up. And equally, you can skip what you already know. But there's also less performing involved in a group. A certain amount of energy goes into not looking lost. Introverts in particular find that quietly exhausting. The trade-off is real, though. Studying alone means nobody catches the mistake you've been repeating confidently for a month. So the strongest students I know do both. They learn alone and then test themselves out loud on somebody else.
Here is the language bank from everything you have just heard. Do not try to swallow all 12. Choose 3, use them out loud this week, and let the rest go. And the second half. The same instruction applies. 3 of these out loud this week. Finally, what band 9 actually means, in the words of the public descriptors, and once again our honest caveat about that label. Your turn. Here is the challenge. If this helped, subscribe to bmaster79, and I will see you in the next one.